All right, here we go. So we're in Parshas Vaeira. So I want to relate. This is all Yetzias Mitzrayim. So at the Seder, if you remember, we say Rabbi Yehuda Hoya Nosem Bem Simonim. Rabbi Yehuda gave Simonim of the Makos. These is Vaeira is the Parsha of the Makos. Most of the Makos, seven of the Makos took place in Parshas Vaeira, three in Parshas Bo. So in Parshas Vaeira, so on on all of the Makos. Rabbi Yehuda Yonosem Behem Simonim. Rabbi Yehuda makes a simon for it, and the simon was the tzach, adash, ba'achab. So it's the first letter of each one of the makos, dom sadei akinim, yes, arov dever shchin, bord arbe choshech, and makas v'choros. The tzach, adash, ba'achab. So this is like Chazal used this for a memory for the purpose of memorization, in order so that it should be retained in our memory easily, the makos and in their order. So but he created these simonim because one of the goals of the Seder night is to imprint within us the events of Mitzias Mitzrayim. We have to relive as if we were actually there. And in V'chol dor v'dor chayav adam liros es atzmo ki'ilu hu yatsa mimitzrayim. So that we actually can relive the events of the Golus and the events of the Geula. So therefore, Rabbi Yehuda made the simonim. And so they point out that there are three, in doing it that way, Dam Tzadei Akinim, yes, and then Arav Dever Shchin, Bardar Bechoshech. So he put them into categories, 3, 3, and 4. The Makas Bechoros is in a unique category because that was not done through Moshe or through Aaron. It was done by Kodesh Baruch Hu himself, the Makas Bechoros. So the reason for the categories is like this. The first category of Dam Tzadei Akinim were all put in effect not by Moshe Rabbeinu, but by Aaron HaKohen. Moshe Rabbeinu did not do it. The second one, Orov, Dever, Shri, and Moshe Rabbeinu put them into effect, but he did not use the mater. We'll see in a minute. The third category was Bar Dar Bechoshech. Moshe used the mater for this. Okay? So Makas Bechoros, as I said, was a totally different, unique character because the pasuk says, "Ani v'lo malach v'hikesi kol bechor be'eretz Mitzrayim." Ani v'lo soraf. Nobody was an intermediary. Nobody was a direct involvement of Hakadosh Baruch Hu. So the role of Aaron was established by Hakadosh Baruch Hu at the role of Aaron was established to be the spokesman for Moshe. Moshe claimed that he was around Sosayim, that he wasn't able to speak properly. So he said, don't worry, Aaron will be your Navi. Aaron, and a Navi, by the way, the word Navi comes from Tavua or Yaniv, which all means to produce, to flourish. And the productivity of the mouth, yes, is the ultimate productivity of the mouth is, of course, the nevuah from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's why it's called a navi. But all right, but besides all that, Aaron was supposed to be the spokesperson for Moshe Rabbeinu. And it's interesting that that was his role. So why in the world was he called upon to bring about the first three makos? Dom, Tzvadeya, Kinim. So Rashi points out like this, that the first makkah and the second makkah were makkahs on the Yeor, on the so-called god of Mitzrayim, the Nile. So it was the Yeor that was being used as a mechanism or as the result of the intervention of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in this world through Moshe Rabbeinu, and that was the Makis of Dom and Svardeya. Vayom Hashem el Moshe, Emor el Aaron neteyes yodcha b'matecha al hanaharos, on the rivers, on the lakes, and v'halas atzvardeim, and let the frogs come up. So you had the dam, which came because the whole world, all the water of Egypt turned into blood, and then you had the tzvardeim, which the frogs that came up from the water. So Rashi says there, why did Aaron do it and not Moshe Rabbeinu? Lefisha Hegin Ayor al Moshe. The river, the Nile, protected Moshe Rabbeinu kishenishlach letocho when he was put into it. Lefikach lo loka al yedei al yodo. Therefore, he did not be the one to cause the river, so to speak, to suffer, to receive a makkah. Lo bedom v'lo b'tzavardeya v'lo kal yedei Aaron. So we now understand that this was a unique category, that Aaron was the one that brought about the makkah. But what about the kinim? So there too, the Torah says, "Vayom Hashem al Moshe Amor al Aaron neteyes matcha v'haches ofer," smite the dust of the earth, and it became lights all over Mitzrayim. So Rashi here points out too, they didn't deserve it. The earth did not deserve for it to be punished, as it were, or to be hurt, as it were, by Moshe. When Moshe Rabbeinu killed the Egyptian who was smiting a Jew, it says, Vayitmenehu, he hid them in the chol, Vayitmenehu b'chol, v'lo kal yedei Aaron. So now we have, it was Aaron that did it. So we have this clear and very open reason, a very interesting reason even, to say that why Moshe himself was not the active one to bring about the Makkah. Now, so from this we see that Chazal, who explained to us all this, that is telling us a lesson, that one needs to have the proper attitude even relating to inanimate objects. I mean, you don't want to hit somebody, okay, as another person. But what's the big deal if the water gets turned into blood? What's it's an inanimate object. It has no feelings, has no sense of being insulted. It's the water. All it is water. So the Gemara says like this, and it brings a raya. It brings a proof to this idea that you have to be careful. And he says, Bira de shosis mine, a well from which you drank, lo tashti bokala. Don't throw stones into the well that you drank from. So this, by the way, has a very practical application. Something that you have benefit from, even if it's not a person, even if it's a thing, you're not allowed to act with it in a very disparaging way. So there's a practical application of halacha, which tells us like this, that if one is walking in the street and passes by food lying on the ground, yeah, in a shameful way, you shouldn't just pass by, but what should you do? Pick it up and put it away, even wrap it up and put it into the garbage if you have to. But it shouldn't lie there, so-called naked in front of everybody and everything in a very disrespectful way. So you got to be sensitive. This is teaching us to be insensitive, to be very sensitive for inanimate objects, not to treat them with disrespect, because they too have a purpose in this world. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created whatever it is, a plant, even that's already a little bit more alive, but something that even a lamp, anything that's there that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us the ability to create, yes, that is an outcome of HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself, and therefore it has a purpose. Hashem created the material in order for it to become what it is, and therefore you have to create it you got to deal with it with a certain level of dignity. So certainly, if you benefit from something, you shouldn't show contempt. So here, Moshe Rabbeinu benefited so much from the water and from the chol and the dust that it didn't pay for it. It wasn't right for him to smite it. Now, Rav Dessler, he asked a very interesting question. He said like this: if causing plagues on the water and on the earth can it be compared to throwing a stone into a well that you drank from? In other words, it's the same idea. Seemingly, that's what the Gemara is saying. It's like the same idea. Don't throw stones into something that you benefit from. So he says, what if the well or throwing the stone into the well teaches us a moral lesson? If you throw a stone into the well and you get and it would have some application in a way that would be a lesson to take out of it, then it would not be considered showing contempt. On the contrary, that act is trying to teach something. That act is trying to show us something. So, for example, if the well were used as some sort of superstition and they treated it with awe because they felt that it had some supernatural power, it would be justified to throw a stone into the well to show that it's not divine, that it's not the power, it isn't in control. What are you playing games for? How silly can you be? So since you can take out of it a moral lesson, that would not be considered that you have caused something that you benefited from to be treated in a unacceptable way. Even the Mesilas Yesharim speaks about this concept, and he said that the world was created to service mankind. There isn't anything in the world that man wasn't created for mankind to take benefit from. It wasn't that they have a whole bunch of trees in the world and it was from us, for human being. Everything, every single thing that a person, even any inanimate object, is there for us to take a benefit from, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one that designed it. So, if one uses things and excludes HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I mean, we know we take it for granted. We just go through life and we take it for granted. We move this, we move from here, physical things. I don't know, a blanket, okay? Anything. The wool, the whole thing, the whole process started from HaKadosh Baruch Hu creating it, the ability. So if you do treat it in a way that doesn't include HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Mela, when you throw the stone into the river or to the well, you throw the stone into the well. So what's happening? You are showing that this well is not divine, then it's not considered that you did something wrong. On the contrary, you brought about a moral lesson from it. However, if he uses the world not in that way and doesn't recognize that it's all coming from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then throwing the stone into the well is a terrible thing. You shouldn't do that. Now, he says, Rav Dessler, wait a minute. Moshe Rabbeinu did not smite the water, he did not smite the earth because he benefited from it. But such a Kiddush Hashem came out of it. Right? That's what Rav Dessler is asking. He says, I understand that if you're comparing it to throwing a stone into waters that you drank from, a river, a well that you drank from, but if you do it in order for it to show a moral lesson from it, connected you to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, there was no greater moral lesson in the world than the Makkos of Mitzrayim. All the Makkos of Mitzrayim, and maybe we'll talk about that next week, even if hopefully it doesn't rain. But if the Makkos of Mitzrayim, that was the core, that was the source. That's the whole source of all of our emunah, everything we believe in, everything that we know about HaKadosh Baruch Hu was demonstrated that His presence is truly there. So therefore, says Rav Dessler, when you made a makkah on the river, you were causing a big Kiddush Hashem. So if you're causing a big Kiddush Hashem, you should be able to do it. That was his question. So each one of the set of makkahs, it's very interesting, of the Tzach, Adash, Bacham, taught a moral lesson. Not only a moral lesson, but taught us a part of our true emunah and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So at the end of the first three makos, Dom Tzodei Akinim, the Pasuk says, Bezos Teda Ki Ani Hashem. Through this, you'll know that I am Hashem. What does it mean, I am Hashem? I'm Yud Kei Vav Kei. They also knew that there were spiritual powers. They were all over the Avodah Zarah, and they had Kishuf, and they had all those things. But the Yud Kei Vav Kei, like in this week's Parsha, the verse it says, Shmi Hashem, Yud Kei Vav Kei, no, that even the others didn't have the connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu through the Yud Kei Vav Kei. Only Yetzias Mitzrayim brought that out. That's why Paro says, Mi Hashem Sheshma V'Kolo. Who is this Yud Kei Vav Kei you're talking about? I never heard of that name. That name didn't exist. That isn't anything that I have any connection to. Don't talk to me about he who is the source of all of creation. Don't do that, because it doesn't exist for me. So the first three makkos, that was the beginning to show Ani Hashem. I am Hashem. Leman Teda Kani Hashem. The second group, Adash, the Arav, Dever, Shechin, taught the world that not only is Hashem present, not only did he create the world and create everything that exists in the world, that is the cause of everything that happens in the world, but he will respond to everything we do. He has a response. In other words, he's connected. He's aware of everything that we do, both positive, Hashem, and negative. Chas v'sholem, that we should do something like that. Because the Pasuk says, after those three makos, the Dever, the Adash, yes, Arav, Dever, Shechin, the Manteda, Pasuk says this. So you're not doing this to you guys. Lemanteda ki ani Hashem b'kerev ha'aretz. I'm here also. Don't think I'm on some place upstairs and I don't have any connection to what's going on down here. I know exactly what's happening down here. And how do we know this? Because it was clearly demonstrated in these makkos, because specifically he said, I'm going to do it to you, Mitzrayim, and not in Eretz Goshen. Dever, yeah, the Arav, Dever, Shechin, that was all only in the rest of Mitzrayim, but not where the Jews were. So you see, Hashem was aware of everything that's going on in this world. And the third set, Ba'achav, showed us Nevuah. So those are the three central principles of our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Number one, that he's here. Number one, he created everything. Number one, that he's in control of everything. Number two, that he's aware of everything that we do. He didn't go to sleep. He didn't go to take a rest and say, "I'm not. You run your world. I'll run my world." No, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is involved in everything we do. And then the third thing is that he speaks to mankind, because in these makkos it says, "Va'asher lo sam libo el devar Hashem." They didn't pay attention when God was speaking. Oh, that's a different story altogether. These makkos demonstrated that not only is Hashem there, not only does Hashem aware of what's going on, but he's letting us know. He talks to mankind, ultimately with the Kabbalah Satira and Nevuah and all of those things. So, this is one of the most important, according to the Mesilas Yesharim that I mentioned before, that is the most exalted function of all created things, to be a vehicle to demonstrate the truth of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, everything that exists. Therefore, Rav Dessler asks, why is it wrong for Moshe to cause all these makkos? Why should it be wrong? So Rav Dessler answers like this. This is such an insightful answer, and it's something that is very much nogea. It's very pertinent to our lives. Rav Dessler answered like this: a person's midos, and this is what we're talking about to a large degree, the midos of a person, the character traits of a person, are more so determined by his sensitivities, his feelings, than his intellect. The Gemara says, Rachmana, it's Gemara in Sanhedrin, Gemara that Rachmana liba bai. Rabbeinu Shloim through the Torah wants the heart of a person. Those are sensitivities. If one blunts his sensitivity to inanimate objects, even, then it does damage to his soul, to our very nefesh, and it will diminish us if we're less than refined as we're supposed to be. Person who is thoughtful, on the other hand, who's kind and feels gratitude to whatever. Look, it's raining outside. Yes, it was a bit of an interruption. Yes, it was a bit of a hardship, right? But this is coming to us directly from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And if we're kind and we appreciate all the water that's coming into Eretz Yisrael and the Kinneret is overflowing, besides the streets here. But I mean, everything is. It's just like we gotta appreciate the Rabbanu Shalom. We have to have our Koras Hatov to him. So while my intellect may judge that smiting the river would bring about a Kiddush Hashem, that's for sure brought about a Kiddush Hashem. But the emotions of Moshe Rabbeinu in doing it are stirred by the act. He did this to the water, and he might have a damaged midah of Koras Hatov, or he might have a damaged midah of Rachamim. So when he does the act, his eyes, his ears, they're all being affected by his hitting the water. And that would, in a sense, he hit the water. There's an act of showing disdain for it. And therefore, it wasn't so much that the water is going to be hurt. It wasn't so much that you did something to an inanimate object that has no feeling. It's what it does to us. If we take advantage of an inanimate object and we act with it with a sense of disdain, then we have become diminished in our midos. There's a famous Gemara about Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi. Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi was the one who was the redactor of the Mishnayos. He was from the greatest of the Tanoim. And the Gemara tells us that Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi suffered intense physical pain, intestinal pain for many, many years, 13 years. Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, who we call Rabbi, he's the Rabbi of Klal Yisrael. And who else is called Rabbi of Klal Yisrael? Is Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu was the one that communicated to us the Torah Shebiksav, and Rabbi is the one that communicated to us, Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, the Torah Shebal Peh. And because of his saintly character, his humility, his self-denial, in spite of the fact that he was enormously wealthy and enormously influential, he had a chavrusa with the Hadrian, not Hadrian, but the other one, forgot his name already, but one of the Roman emperors, he had a chavrusa with him, the famous Gemara there, that he would come secretly and he would kill the guards that he went with, those who were protecting him. He would kill one on the way out and one on the way back, so nobody should know that he's learning from a Jew. He didn't want it to be known. All right, but from this you see that Rebbe was an enormously powerful and great person. And before he died, ad kedei kach, he lifted up his 10 fingers and he said that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you know that I use these fingers only for Torah, and even my little finger, I didn't take unnecessary pleasure in the world. Nothing that wasn't absolutely necessary did I take from the world in spite of all my wealth and in spite of all my power. Yet in spite of this, he suffered pain for 13 years. Now, what did he do wrong? So the Gemara tells us, because a calf came on its way to the slaughterhouse, and he was walking in the street, and this calf broke away from the people that were taking him to the slaughterhouse, and he ran to Rebbe, and he was hiding himself beneath the coat of Rebbe, and Kilu crying, saying, "Save me! I don't want to die." And Rebbe turns to the calf and says, "Go, because that's what you were created for. You were created for this purpose." And in Shemayim they said, "You showed no mercy, now you're going to suffer." And this Rebbe suffered for 13 years enormous pain because he needed that in order to readjust that sense. Now, but was he wrong? Of course not. He wasn't wrong. He did nothing wrong. An animal is supposed to go to the slaughterhouse. That's not only that, it's the highest thing that an animal could possibly do. If it's slaughtered properly and it's food for a Talmid Chacham, there's nothing greater than a state for an animal than that. But where's the Rachmanis? Where was your Rachmanis? Seichel, he was 100% right. Go. This is what you were created for. But where was the Rachmanis? You don't have Rachmanis, you're going to see what it means. And that when did the pain leave him? So one day, 13 years later, his daughter was cleaning the house and she found a weasel hiding somewhere in the house. And she was trying to throw it away and, get rid of it. And he says, "No, no, no, no. Don't throw out the weasel. Even though it's a disgusting animal, don't throw it out." Because it says, "V'rachamov al kol ma'asav." Hashem has rachmanis on everything that he created. Do you hear that? So here's a very, very crucial concept that we have to take out of the whole story of the Makkos of Mitzrayim. That Moshe Rabbeinu, yes, of course, all the Emunah, and that we'll get to it another time. But right now we're learning that there were other messages, subtle messages. Moshe Rabbeinu, don't you hit the water because it'll damage you, because there'll be something missing in your Rachmanis, in your Midos. Rabbi Akiva even. Show you how careful Rabbi was in terms of with his midas. Rabbi Akiva, it wasn't easy to give up your. It isn't easy to give up your life. I mean, some people just go ahead and when their life is meaningless, it's easy to give up your life. But when your life means something, Rabbi Akiva, you know what it said? He said before they killed him, before they combed his body with iron combs, before they died, he said, "Kol yomai hoyisi mitztayer mosai yovo liyodai v'akameno." It says that we have to mekadosh Shem Shamayim b'chol nafshecha. You have to love Hashem b'chol nafshecha, even if it means taking your soul. And he said, my whole life I've been working on trying to do this and have the right attitudes for this, and now it came to my hand, and I'm so grateful that I'm able to fulfill it. So why didn't you have a little Rachmanis on that poor calf? He was giving up his life. Yeah, I know, for good reason. But have Rachmanis on him. He was so sensitive, Rebbe, just to show you how much was expected of him, that when he heard the tragic news of Rabbi Chanina ben Trajon, who was burnt wrapped around the Sefer Torah, wrapped around him as one of the Asar Ruges Malchus, and the Romans burned him alive. So when he heard this, he was overwhelmed, and he started to cry. But then he began to really cry, because the executioner, this is what the Gemara brings, the one that killed him, the one who burned him alive, on this Rabbi Chanina ben Trajon with the Sefer Torah, he said, when I saw the dignity by which this person gave up his life for his God, this has to be the truth. He jumped into the fire. And a voice in heaven came out and said, Rabbi Akiva and the hangman and the one that killed him and the executioner, they both entered Olam Haba together. So Rebbe cried, but he didn't just cry for Rebbe Chanina ben Chadron. He also cried Tradion, but he also cried because of the executioner. Because he said some people work their entire lives, like Rebbe Akiva, to reach that point. And this executioner, this vile person who was prepared to kill Rabbi Hanina ben Trajon, in one moment of recognition of the truth, it was so powerful that he was prepared to die too. So Rabbi cried over the tragic loss of Rabbi Hanina, but also because of the death of the cruel executioner, because the two of them were able to achieve the same thing. So we see that the midos. This is really what we're getting at. I know everybody. We have Amuna and we have Bitachon and all of these wonderful and necessary elements of being Jewish. But the midos, the character traits, the ability to act with dignity and compassion is extremely crucial, and we also learn it from Yetzias Mitzrayim. And there was another message. The Shifra and Pua, the midwives. Yes, Shifra was Moshe Rabbeinu's mother, Yocheved. Pua was Moshe Rabbeinu's sister, Miriam. And I don't know. That's part of the problem of doing it at home. No, I turn off my phone, but this phone I can't turn off. I should have taken it off the hook. Anyway, now we learn also the necessity for our character refinement from Shifra and Pua. Let me tell you what I mean. The Gemara says, as I said, Shifra was Yocheved and Pua was Miriam. And why were they called these names? So Shifra was called Shifra because she mishaperes es havlad. She gave the baby a pleasant appearance. She cleaned him. She set him up, and she gave it to the mother in such a beautiful way. So the mother should immediately accept that baby as her child. Pua, it says, why was she called Pua? Shemefapas. She would soothe the baby when he was first born, or she was first born. She would soothe the baby who was crying, and she'd coo. And it's mefapas is this cooing and murmuring to try to calm it down. So what do we see? What do we see from here? We see from here that, do you realize Shifra and Pua, what did they do? They were midwives. They were taking care of the women who were Jewish women who were giving birth. What did Paro tell them to do? Now, Paro was stronger than President Trump, okay? Bigger, stronger, more powerful. I don't care if he has an atomic bomb. That doesn't matter. But he controlled the whole world. The whole world needed him. The whole world was without him. Nobody lived. The whole world he was he controlled. And what did this man tell these midwives? Kill the babies. And they didn't listen. And they helped the mothers give birth again and again and then again. And what about, this is Reb Chaim Friedlander that said, look, amazing. Their names were not called for their great Mesiras Nefesh to be able to stand up to Paro, the ruler of the world, and not do as he said. And who knows what would have happened to them without their smart response and saying, the Jewish women, they don't do it. It's too late. We can't help it. We can't do anything to the baby because they're midwives themselves. They can give birth all by themselves. We're just there as a witness. We don't really do much for these Jewish women. So the point that he was making, this Rav Friedlander, that their names were given for the way they treated the babies, not because of their Mesiras Nefesh. And the names that the Torah ascribes, this is the Torah we're talking about. The Torah calls them Shifra and Pua. That indicates who they really were. The Shem, Shifra, she had control, beauty, to make things beautiful for the baby. Pua, to soothe the baby. This is a shame. And I don't know if we mentioned this or not in one of the other shiurim, but the concept of shame name is a concept of what the essence is. Sham, it's all there. That's where it is. Shame, sham. There. It is what you are. Your name represents who you are and what you can achieve and what who you are. And Chazal tell us that parents have a little bit of Ruach HaKodesh when they name the children, because they don't have the same insight that the Olam Emes has, where these kids come from, where this neshama came from. But the essence of the neshama is connected in the shame, in the name. Today in our world, there's a tendency to stress development of the mind, which is very important, but they can neglect the cultivation of a little bit of recognition of the sensitivity necessary to be a proper Jew. Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi was not ashamed to burst into tears at the thought of the saintly life of 70 years. He achieved the same thing in one moment. This man was able to achieve a sincere tshuva from a totally sinful life. And it's a recognition of what it took. The concept here is this. It's not that I put in all this work and you do it so easily. It's the comparison to the two. You can do it so, work very, very, very hard and to achieve it. And he did, Rebbe Chanina ben Tadra, no question about it. Full life to do that. But this man who was leading his entire life as a sinful life, and he had the ability to recognize in one moment that was able to touch the sensitivity of Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi. And that teaches us we shouldn't be ashamed of our emotions. And we should work hard at developing some level of sensitivity towards every aspect of life that surrounds us, everything that we do and everything that we see. Think about it a little bit, but think about it in terms of midos. Think about it in terms of compassion. Think about it in terms of, how crucial it is, and not as, oh, it's a nice thing. Yeah, it's good people. Yeah, he's a nice guy, nice people. No. It's crucial for us. We become such important Avdei Hashem as a result of it. There's a very interesting today. I'll give you an idea of what I'm getting at. There is a medrash, a chazal. It's brought in novels. It's a mishnah that b'chol yom v'yom baskol yotzei mehachorev. Every single day there's this voice, this sound, but it doesn't really mean, you'll see in a minute, and nobody's ever heard it, right? Maybe the people of that time, the time of Muhammad Sinai, they did. But since then, the chol yom v'yom yotzei baskol mehachorev, and says, Oy lahem labriyos me'elbona shel Torah. Woe it is to people, to humanity, for embarrassing the Torah. None of us, I don't believe it, but please don't. And if you did, please don't tell me, because I'll feel really bad. But if none of us really have heard that call of elbona, of the shame that the Torah is suffering today, and when you think about it, it's interesting. There's this one guy who was killed recently, and he grabbed onto something by reading the Bible. We'll call it the Bible. It's not even the Torah, but the Bible. Bible's not Torah. But he read the Bible and he read the history of the Jews and he read that there was such a thing as Shabbos. Now this man had a modicum of sensitivity. It wasn't what his. I'm not interested in his politics. But he's saying, look, keep the Sabbath. The Almighty, he believed in God. The Almighty said, keep the Sabbath and turn off your damn telephone. What's the end of it? Why is it so terrible? And think about what you can achieve. So this should sadden us that at least are not moved by the knowledge that there is such a statement that the world is not appreciating what the Torah is. The Torah is I mean, yeah, the Bible's the largest selling book in history. There hasn't been such a book that so many people have bought, but that's not Torah. Me'albono shel Torah. You're trading Torah into something which is when the Torah was translated into Greek by the Greek emperors. The Greek emperor that was so harsh to the Jews wanted the Torah to be translated. And from that, it's called the Septuagint. And that is the source of the entire translation of the Torah to Greek and then into English and to every other language that's possible. But do you realize what it's doing? How it diminishes the power, the beauty, the insight, the chokhmah, everything about Torah and the holiness about Torah. Because as we're talking about, we see all the intricacies that lie beneath the surface of the Torah. They won't be able to extract this from the fact that told Aaron to hit the water. They certainly don't learn Rashi. But even if they did learn the Rashi, it wouldn't hit them that this is what we have to recognize. Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, this is a beautiful story. Rabbi Yisrael Salanter was walking home late one night from the Beis Medrash. He was going home, and he passed the house of the cobbler. And it was late at night. It was very, very late at night, and he found the cobbler still working by the light of a candle. Obviously, they didn't have electricity then. So it was on the light, by the light of the candle, he was working at night. So he asked the cobbler why he was working so late. And the cobbler, the shoemaker, said to him, as long as the candle burns, it's still possible to mend. To mend. I can still fix the shoes. These words inspired Rabbi Yisrael Salanter so much that he proclaimed, as long as the candle within man, which Ner Hashem Nishmas Odom, we have our neshama is called a candle that's supposed to give light. Ner Hashem Nishmas Odom, as long as it burns, meaning as long as I'm alive, it's still possible to mend one's ways. Possible to mend. Do you realize sensitivity? This is sensitivity. He sees a man working late at night. Of course, he wants to make more money because he's busy working at night. But he says, I can do more. I can mend. I can fix the shoes. And Moshe and Rabbi Yisrael says, yeah, not only that, but as long as our candle is lit, we're still alive, we can mend our ways too. That shows the greatness of Rabbi Yisrael Salanter. And by the way, don't think for a moment that he wasn't brilliant. It wasn't just that he was a Musar man that had, ideas of character and so on and so forth. It's all true. I mean, thanks to him, we have the whole Musar movement in the modern world today. But he was also enormously brilliant. They tell over that he was invited to give a drasha, not just a drasha, they was giving a pilpul in a Beis Medrash to big Talmidei Chachamim. Okay, he was going to give a Torah analysis of a particular subject, and he hung up on the wall Mare Mekomos so that people can prepare. He was saying, I'm going to quote this, I'm going to quote this, I'm going to quote this, I'm going to quote that, and there was a chutzpahnik, a fellow that decided he was going to play a trick on Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, and he changed all the Mara Mekoimis to something else. So everybody else prepared one thing. When Rabbi Yisrael came out, not the thing that Rabbi Yisrael Salanter had prepared. So Rabbi Yisrael Salanter came to the shul and he saw the list of the Mara Mekoimis, and it wasn't what he wrote up. So he smiled. He came up to the base in the Beis Hamedrash and came up to the lectern and he started, and he stopped for about a minute and a half, maybe two. And you know what? He made a new pilpul on the drosha on the Mara Mekoimos that idiot tried to change and think that they were going to insult him and show him up. But he was able to create a new Dvar Torah from all of those new Mare Mekomos. He created a beautiful pilpul, and they saw the greatness of his mind. But that's not Rabbi Yisrael Salanter alone. Rabbi Yisrael Salanter was his midos. There's one other thing, maybe. Okay, 5 minutes. The pasuk says that there's a ramp on the Beis Hamikdash, on the Mizbeach, that the Kohen went up on a ramp. It says, "V'lo sale b'malo sal mizbechi." Don't go up with steps. Asher lo segale avoscha alav. You shouldn't reveal your nakedness. Now, everyone knows that the Kohen Gadol and all the other Kohanim had special garments, and they wore linen pants. I shouldn't say pants for the English people that are listening, but they should not. They wore trousers. They wore trousers, linen trousers. So what's the big deal? It wasn't like they were wearing a robe and nothing underneath. So why salot tisgala ya'evos? So obviously the pasuk is saying to us, don't go up, build a ramp, shouldn't go up, because in order to go up with steps, you have to take larger steps, and you're spreading your legs, and it's not quite befitting for the mizbeach. It's not real nakedness, but it's close to it. You have to take bigger steps. Therefore, don't go up on steps, but rather go up with a ramp. Why? Again, because a human being is a Tzelem Elokim, and because he feels hurt and slighted, we must make every effort to show the proper respect to steps, to the ramp. Everything that I'm doing, even that requires that we demonstrate a certain level of appreciation of who and what we are doing and what we encounter. And as for closing, as long as we're talking about Yitzias Mitzrayim, the Yerushalmi on the pasuk that says, "Vayitzabem el bnei Yisrael," HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanded Moshe Rabbeinu unto the Jewish people. What was he supposed? Ma'amatzivam. What did he command the Jewish people? Al Parshas Shiluach Avodim, freeing slaves. It was permitted under certain circumstances to have slaves, because they couldn't pay, and you're letting them work it off. And the Jewish slave, believe me, was living like a king. He was living better than his owner. The owner bought something he couldn't buy it unless he gave the slave one too. If he slept on 2 pillows, he had to give the slave 2 pillows. If he had 2 covers, he had to give the other one 2 covers. And if he only had 1 cover, he had to give it to the slave. But they're shiluach avodim. You have to send them away with properly. One of the reasons that Klal Yisrael was thrown into Golus, among others, that we've learned, was that they didn't observe the laws of shiluach avodim. They like to keep on, hold on to what they have purchased. Before a person can attain redemption, they have to, in a sense, get rid of the tendency of wanting to hold on to what what's mine. It's mine. You ever see kids fighting? The kids are always fighting with each other. Siblings, little ones, right? 3-year-old, 3-year-old, 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old kids. They're battling. What? No, it's mine. It's mine. It's mine. It's all mine. Something that's mine, I don't want to give up. It's interesting. When were we told this law? Right before we were ready to leave Mitzrayim. Because man's nature is to acquire and to hold on what he acquires, his acquisitions, almost at any cost. And we find it very difficult to let go of our slaves if we had them. Now, please put yourselves back into the time when they had Jewish slaves. I'm not talking about Goyish slaves, I'm talking about Jewish slaves. However, why did he tell them then? Because when a person himself is attaining freedom, right before they're getting ready to leave, that's after all the makkos and all the miracles, there's a chance that he could hear how important freedom is. And speaking of that, we realize what's going on today too. It's all now. That's why before the Geula that's coming to us, we got to understand that it's not only us, it's the whole world that has to be redeemed. The whole world has to become free. And in this way, you'll be able to taste the true taste of freedom. You're about to go to be free, but understand what now you understand it. So therefore, carry it through. And when in a situation when you have slaves, you'll understand how important it is to allow them their freedom. This way, our hearts will overflow with love and compassion, empathy for all of Hashem's creations. And this is the message that we have to know that comes through the Parshas of Golus and Gulas Mitzrayim. This is with the Makkos and all of the things that took place. And there was a lot of violence. There was so much violence and upheaval. But the compassion had to be there too. And that violence that took place was necessary. Necessary. And not only was it necessary to punish the Egyptians, but also to teach us what not to do. And even all the Makkos, it says, Vashem no gafes Mitzrayim no gof virapo. It was a punishment, and it was a plague onto the Egyptians, and it was a healing for us. But not just that we became free, but that our souls were nourished by the concept of compassion and love for everything that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created. And if we take that out of Yetzias Mitzrayim, then we're truly free. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening. And it was such a pleasure to be with you, even if I'm not in person, but it's almost in person because I see you, those that are here and showing their face. Anyway, have a wonderful week, and we'll meet again, hopefully in person next week. Be'ezras Hashem.
Thank you, Rabbi Silver. Thank you so much.
Thank
You're
you
so
very
welcome.
much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. So nice. Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
the best. So, Leah, thank you. All of you. I don't know. I didn't even know how many people are here, but you'll figure out. I saw Roberta also, and I saw Mrs. Gans. Gewaltig. Thank you so very, very much. Oh, and you too. That's Shalom. It's all the way from Australia. Must be late for you. Anyway, have a wonderful, wonderful week, all of you. Call Tov. Goodbye.
Right.